My first ever experience with TTRPGs was a Roll20 game of Space D&D, where all players were using capital class spaceships, acting as a fleet. Sounds good, right? I thought so too, which is why I joined as a rogue AI ship made of nanomachines. Son.
Nanomachines, son!
DM worked with me to balance my encounter. Standard hit mechanics, weaker hull, stronger shields, etc. This was 4 years ago now. I don't remember everything exactly though. I got shown a list of level 1 weapons and I'm told to pick 20. I thought the number of any given weapon we had would be a modifier for our hit/damage rolls. Now we get to the game itself. There are 13 players, all in various capital ships, with various weapons, and we find in a horrifying realization that the DM has us roll to hit and damage for each and every single gun we have. Some players have as many as 40 guns. This happens every round. On top of the 80 plus rolls some people have to do every round, all guns have independent targeting and we have to specify what each is shooting before we roll, usually abbreviated to something like 10 on Corvette X, 20 on Destroyer Y, and each group of firing guns goes through each gun's rolls. And on top of that, an entire broadside of 40 of the most powerful guns us level 1 scrubs are allowed to use do 4,000 damage. The level 1 pirates we are fighting have an average of 20,000 shields and 40,000 hull health. The only reason we weren't wiped out was because our HP was in the 30,000 shield and 50k hull range. In a 4-hour session, we'd be lucky to complete 2.5 rounds of combat and needed 8+ rounds to finish the fight. Last I heard, the game was down to 2 players, the DM's brother and DM's IRL friend, before sputtering out entirely about 2 months after starting. I'm the kind of guy who supported my rogue getting a dice roller for her sneak attack. This DM just jumped ship and said, yeah, rolling 80 dice? That sounds like tons of fun. Yeah, turned out great for him, didn't it? I was reminded of this story after hearing an RPG horror story in a YouTube video about a party who judged a player for the entire campaign because of one mistake in session 1. I was invited by a friend to join a D&D campaign with all of his friends. My friend, we'll call him Artificer because that's what he was good friends with everyone except for the DM, friend of a friend, and the Kenku Rogue, who he really did not like, and I think the story will quickly illustrate why. Anyways, we were starting at level 3, and after we got our first mission, we had a few nights to prepare ourselves. Artificer asked the DM if he can make bombs, and when he does, he rolls a nat 1. This results in a funny yet ultimately harmless moment where the Artificer blows a bomb up in his face. We had to rush him to the medical ward and get chastised by our employer, but it was all in good fun. It's a nat 1, and we're all here to have a good time and laugh. Not the rogue, though. For the rest of the campaign, whenever Artificer asked to do anything, it would be met with snarky comments from Rogue about not blowing yourself up, or I think we'd like to get back in one piece. Whenever Artificer failed at anything, Rogue would immediately snark back with, well, at least you didn't make anything explode, or stop that before you blow your hand off. The party, all friends with Artificer, told the Rogue to knock it off, as we all explained that Artificer generally doesn't like being made fun of constantly. But it did not stop. After 5 to 7 sessions of every damn thing the Artificer did being met with, didn't explode, XD, from the Rogue, my friend just quit, and the mood was kind of just ruined, so I left too. Not helping was the fact that Artificer did not get much time in the spotlight in general. In fact, no one was, other than the Warlock and Paladin, who were both orcs, and we happened to walk into an orc war camp for several sessions, so they were leading most of the roleplay, while we were just the otherkin friends. The Rogue's only real roleplay, other than snarking at the Artificer, was to roleplay his drinking problem. 95% of interactions the Rogue had would be either him saying, I drink from my flask, or him snarking about the Artificer. Don't know what happened to the campaign after that. I hope us leaving didn't ruin it for the other players because they seem to be having a good time. I guess there's a few points to be made with the story. 1. Don't flanderdize someone's character because of one thing that happened in the game. It's really lame when someone's character gets turned into the butt of a campaign joke. Don't force people who have a history of not working well together to play together. Even if you think you have a good group around the two rivals to mediate them, it's not gonna end well. 3. To the DM, you have to take some responsibility when a player is complaining about something in your game, man, because the DM did nothing. He basically told the rogue to stop making fun of Artificer like once or twice, and that's it. It's irresponsible and just generally kind of lazy to completely ignore a player's complaints. Running gags can be really fun, but only if they're actually, making everyone laugh. After 7 sessions of non-stop blowing yourself up jokes, it's gonna get lame real quick. You gotta get new material, you know what I mean? Come on, that's comedy 101. Besides, it's not like this Artificer did something overly bad. They rolled a nat 1. I mean, that's gonna happen to everyone eventually at some point. Again, running gags can be fun, not making fun of Ford for being weak, my party making fun of our ranger for constantly running into mimics. That's funny, but this is grating. You know our whole challenging versus frustrating thing when it comes to combat? We need a new phrase for comedy. Funny versus irritating. This jumps the shark right into irritating, and it may have resulted in disseminating this whole party. Damn shame. This is my only D&D horror story from back in the 2000s, when I was a teen in high school. I've told the story in various Facebook groups and figured, why not share it here? Some context. I went to a different school for my circle of best friends. It was one of those all-boys private schools. I was relentlessly bullied and had only 2 friends there who were also some flavor of outcast. I'm gonna call those people DM and Seraph, as he played a fully chaotic half-angel. So one reason I was bullied so much was because in the early 2000s, the term asexual didn't really exist. So when the other guys found out I didn't seem to care about sex, they immediately assumed I was gay and bullied me accordingly. I guess this was the 2000s. And now we get to the D&D part of this horror story. So me, the DM, and Seraph became friends in our 3rd year. They introduced me to a local card shop that had some gaming PCs you could log on, as well as Dungeons & Dragons tables. We'd hang out there every Friday. I was a bland as bread, self-insert, 20-year-old half-elf sorcerer, fresh out of magic school, who didn't pick up loot most of the time because I was afraid it would count as stealing. Basically, we were trying to stop some kind of dragon cultists from absorbing the souls of several powerful dragons, so our very low-level party of 2 had to figure out a way to kill them first while avoiding direct combat. We had a few short, wacky adventures. I killed a red dragon via a simple puzzle, while Seraph, hilariously, decided to fight him, and we spent most of the dragon's horde money reviving Seraph after he was one-shotted. I accidentally burnt down an entire green dragon's forest with a fireball, with us inside of it, and Seraph had to fly me out, Sonic and Tails style. Another hilarious incident I never got to live down. And then, things took a turn at some point. I forget the exact details that set him on this path, as well as precisely what year of high school it was, and thus what age we all were, but the DM got it into his head to have my character get married to a good-aligned succubus, and said it was going to happen even if I complained, and I did tell him I did not want it to happen every time he mentioned that he was planning that session. Why DM decided to do this was a mystery to me, but I suspect it was a way of trying to cure my prudishness, as he saw it. Again, being ace wasn't something really understood among high school teens in the 2000s. At some point, we made plans to hang out at Seraph's house, which was very far from my home, and play video games and D&D until that evening, when my dad would come and pick us up, something we'd done a couple times prior. As we sat down to play D&D, DM declares that this session would be the one where my character would get married. Again, I said that I did not want to do it. He did not care. He kept going. So in this captive audience type setting, where I couldn't really up and leave, even if I had the guts to, I was a pushover back then too, so a timid, I don't want to do this, was all I really could manage. We had a 100% non-combat, non-adventure session where the king and queen honored our 2-man party with a feast. And their succubus princess daughter had a love at first sight moment with my sorcerer. I have vague memories of most of the session, given it was like 18 years ago. The only non-important part of the story I really remember was a bit where I was locked in my character's guest room at the palace with a hilarious portal to the elemental plane of P in the closet for I don't know, comedy reasons? There was also no way out. But in any case, some way or another, my character gets nabbed or otherwise taken to the princess's chamber, where she proceeds to grab him, and thank the gods, DM tastefully does a fade to black. Scene shifts to Seraph, who accidentally/drunkenly stumbles upon a secret chapel under the palace, where my character is getting married to the princess despite my continued IRL protests. DM was overruling my character protestations and saying, oh, that wasn't happening. But then I remember, yo, there's that bit where you can say, I object, get me out of here, Seraph. Memory gets a bit fuzzy as to whether or not the DM bribed Seraph with sweet loot or not, but Seraph does not object to the marriage, and I think he even jokingly blessed the union as a celestial entity. Cue another feast scene. The princess absconds with my character, yet again for wedding night activities, and the DM looks me dead in the eye and says, it was the best night of your character's life. You're not allowed to say otherwise. In fact, the next morning, your character says to Seraph that it was the most wonderful night of your life. Yep, my high school DM hardcore railroaded me, even hijacked my character's free will to have a self-insert character marry a succubus and have his first time, and told me it was the best night of your character's life and you're not allowed to contradict me. Even though I repeatedly said I, as the player and as the character, didn't want to because it turns out I'm ace. It never got so uncomfortable again, at least, but Princess Succubus showed up every other session to graciously gift the party a whole bunch of important resources as a sign of love to her loving husband, wink wink, and to flirt with my character, again, over my complaining. Finally, the DM gave my sorcerer a recharging rod of frost and flame with some neat spells in it to just shut me up. And yet, he wondered why I started playing my character as a completely deranged, chaotic, neutral, fireball-loving lunatic afterwards. My way of having my character express his trauma from the whole incident. Fortunately, after high school, I no longer had much reason to hang out with those two friends anymore. Doubly so after the DM went and turned into a colossal douche as a young adult. He wasn't already a colossal douche as is? I don't miss him, and I barely miss Seraph, if I'm being honest. So TLDR, one of my friends at my high school takes my self-insert sorcerer, railroads him into getting married, and down and dirty with a succubus, even hijacking my character to say that my character wanted it, despite the fact that I protested because it turns out I'm actually asexual. As a fellow asexual, I empathize with this struggle. We've seen forced romance many, many times, but this person was actively protesting the entire time, multiple times in fact, and the DM just didn't care. It takes some next level derangement to think that forcing somebody into a romance they don't want to be a part of while they're actively saying they don't want to be a part of it is somehow a good thing for them. I mean, seriously, the whole idea of fixing somebody's asexuality is toxic and horrible, and there are no other terms for it. There's no way to positively refer to that behavior. It's just bad. If you don't experience romantic or sexual attraction, there's nothing broken about you. Nothing needs fixing, nothing needs curing. End of conversation. It's a shame because the writers seemed to be having fun before everything went to crap, and, well, no matter what, no matter how fun the campaign was before, behavior like this is the quickest way to ruin it. But in the end, maybe it was for the best in the long term. This DM was definitely not worth playing with in any way. I had a group of friends in college who I played D&D with. When our first campaign, DM'd by my best friend and roommate, ended, one of the other players decided he wanted to be the dungeon master and started pulling together a new campaign for us to use a modified salt marsh setting. I'd only known this guy for about a year at this point. He was married to my roommate's childhood friend, and while there had been a few times he pushed my buttons, both myself and my roommate had agreed to just indulge him most of the time. Neither of us do well with conflict and are quick to give in if it means keeping the peace. I was dealing with some bad mental health stuff around this time, part of which was related to our group's dynamic, and so I decided it would be best for me to step away from them and to not have contact for a little bit until I was better. Flash forward a few months. Both my roommate and another friend told me the DM was asking if I might want to join the campaign soon. Knowing that DM and his wife were due to have their first baby in a month, I said I wouldn't consider it until after the baby was born, as I didn't want to join a campaign that was going to be put on ice soon after. They did in fact pause the campaign for an intermediate amount of time, though most of the players thought it would be at least a few months as the parents got settled. As my health improved, I had started to slowly get in touch with some people in the group again, and one day, everyone but the DM and his wife were hanging out. We started talking about how we missed playing D&D, and eventually we decided that the 4 of us would play together while the DM and his wife were busy with their baby. However, only a week or so later, and less than a month after the baby is born, DM comes back and says he wants to start playing his campaign again. We're all a little shocked, to say the least. A newborn is kind of a big time commitment, and he's still in college, and he's working a job. I was once again asked to join, and this time I said yes, just wanting to have a chance to play again after so long. DM and I start messaging, and I tell him a few options of characters that I want his input on. He responds that once the party leaves their current location, he plans for them to end up in the dream realm for a session, and if I want to be introduced in the first session back, my character would have to be from there. If not, I will have to wait until the party gets out of the dream realm to start playing. Okay. Is it so crazy that another fellow adventurer could just also be in the dream realm at that time? I guess that's just out of the DM's purview, but in any case, I was not really interested in being from the dream realm. I asked if there was another way I could be brought in. I suggested that my character meets the others in her dreams, and when they get back to the real world, she seeks them out. The DM says, technically that could work, but he seems hesitant to go with it, not really giving me a clear reason as to why when I ask. Next, he suggests I play a temporary character, a traveling salesman in the dream realm, to oppose the salesman NPC he has there. Then, after the party returns, my real character could be introduced. I agree that is an option, but I say I'd rather prefer to start with my actual character if possible, as I still believe we can find some way of introducing her. I follow up by suggesting my character has been trapped in the dream realm. Hey, that's my idea, and is looking for a way out. The DM immediately shuts that down, claiming that being trapped in the dream realm, if you're not from there, is a death sentence, and nothing survives more than a week in there. Once again, he says that if I want to start with my actual character in the first session back, I either need to be from the dream realm, or I just need to wait, as with the plan I have for the campaign, there's not a good way to introduce your character until after the party gets back. Despite me giving several options for how he could do that exact thing, I was being shot down. While a part of me thinks I should just wait, I also know this group. What is planned to be one session could very easily balloon into more with how often we get sidetracked, and I could be waiting weeks to be brought in. Finally, I tell him I'm frustrated and feel like my ideas aren't being listened to. It feels very rude how resistant he is to any form of compromise, when I have said multiple times I was willing to come up with something together that could work with his story. He shoots back that I'm not accepting any of his options either. You were the one who chose not to start the campaign with everyone else, and I shouldn't have to change my story to introduce your character now. At that point, I was on my last straw, and I finally broke when it felt like he was punishing me for taking care of my mental health and not joining earlier, as all the times I had chosen to ignore his previous actions came rushing back to me. I realized this guy's story was more important to him than I was. I promptly told him I changed my mind and would not be playing anymore. After a few strongly worded messages from both of us, I knew it wasn't good for me to interact with him anymore, and I had to go through the pain of leaving that group for a second time. While I'm still in contact with a few of the other people, it's always hard knowing they've continued to play without me. Part of me also worries that I'm the one in the wrong here, that I should have just sucked it up and played the temporary character even though I really didn't want to, or waited however many sessions until the group was ready for me. I never want to seem entitled, and I always fear I'm being unreasonable, but I sincerely feel I was not being treated with respect, and I just have to keep telling myself that no D&D is better than bad D&D. Thanks again for your videos, they've really helped cheer me up while going through a D&D rough patch. You're welcome, friend. Oh, by the way, this story was sent in via my email. You can check out that inbox in the description if you want to get your story in one of these videos. Yeah, this whole situation sucks, by the way. The DM is definitely the one in the wrong. You aren't a bad player for not wanting to play a character the DM is forcing you to play. I get really profoundly irritated when DMs cite in-universe reasons for really dumb things, because remember, the DM made the universe. It's just like it's what my character would do. It's what my world would do is not much better. You made the character. You made the world. If it's making the game less fun for the players, then it's bad. There are 1,000 solutions to this problem to allow this person to join the game with their character. If you can't fit them in for another reason, make that clear. Pretending that just because the dream realm is so dangerous, you need to play this temporary character that so happens to be hooked into the plot that I need to happen. Seriously, it just seems like the DM wanted to use this character as a plot convenience, which, yeah, never a good thing. Working characters into the plot is great, but you need to do so collaboratively, not forcefully. This DM just all around, yeah, maybe not the worst, but definitely one of the more annoying ones. Our characters to start are Noble, a little cold to start with, but seemed fine after a bit. They're the DM. Tiffy, generally kind, but can get a little emotional about her characters, plays a tiefling monk whose wife was kidnapped. Bongo, pretty chill, plays a warlock cursed with a magical disease. Rhombus had his head in the clouds a little, but was a good player. Plays a dragonborn wizard-esque class, some sort of homebrew investigator. I think there was another 1 or 2 players, but they aren't central to the conflict, so it's not super important. Some background. I was also running a game for the group, including DM Noble. This was all over Discord and Roll20 because I'm in a different time zone. I am a forever DM, so I was pretty excited when I got the chance to finally play. I rolled up an assassin rogue who was brainwashed by a cult as a teenager and used as an assassin against his small village home. The cult had been wiped out, and he'd been wandering for a bit before he came back to his senses, on the other side of the world from his tiny village with almost no memory of what happened while he was brainwashed. He's convinced that he'd probably killed several of the people in his village while he was being controlled by the cult, and he fully blames himself. So, simply put, simple farm boy to brainwashed assassin to guilt-ridden wanderer who just wants to help. But yeah, here's the story. The first few sessions go mostly without issue, as we escort a princess NPC who was captured by a powerful fae back to her family. As we escort her, we learn that she's been gone for a while, that she's a little uncertain if she wants to return, as she doesn't really care for the politics, and would probably be married off to a rival kingdom to keep the peace. My character, being a farm boy, didn't understand the big picture and was more concerned with what the princess herself wanted, so they got along well. When time came to leave the princess with her family, the party had decided that helping her would be too much of a risk, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to escape. She gave him, my character, a flower. I'm pretty sure there was a romance option there. But as my character was a farm boy who, 1, didn't feel like he deserved a happy relationship because of his guilt, 2, was lured into the brainwashing cult by his first crush, and 3, was implied to have been gay. He naturally politely declined, which DM Noble didn't seem to like much, and the princess turned cold. DM Noble later mentioned that it was a big social foxpa to decline a gift in that part of the world, and seemed to expect me to know that. Thing is, this is a completely homebrew world, and though the others had played a full campaign in it, I had only been playing for this game about 3 to 4 sessions at that point, and even if I knew that, there was no way my farm boy from the other side of the world would know that. Things seemed to calm down after that though, and even though I was disappointed to have lost a roleplay opportunity, I was still excited for the rest of the game and what it would bring. I had a couple cool moments when my character stealthily killed a couple of enemies from the outside of a moving train, and made friends with an imprisoned person who had a much more progressed version of Bongo's character's disease, which brought more roleplay opportunities. Yay! Things seemed fine for a bit, and my character was even getting to know Tiffy's character, who was starting to let down her walls. Her character was afraid of men, I can't remember why. Alas, it was not to last. As we were traveling on a country road, we came across some nasty monsters towards the end of the session. Because a couple of us were going to be away, DM Noble said the next game would be a roleplay only session, and it would be different characters in a historical setting. Neat. Unfortunately, the night before game day, one of my friends was feeling pretty awful, and I stayed up a bit late comforting them, and didn't wake up in time for the game. I figured it wouldn't be an issue seeing as it wasn't super important to the session, and half of us were away anyway, but boy was I wrong. DM Noble last minute decided she wanted to work out some frustration with combat, and switch back to the main game with only 2 of 5 players, and when I woke up, different time zones remember, I was told my character had been killed. Great. I'm pretty averse to conflict and didn't want to lose the only game I was playing in, so I tried to look past it, hoping the DM would have a plan to bring me back, maybe even adding to the story. I was almost right. The DM brought all the characters into a weird pocket dimension with the world's trickster god there. To clarify, my character's backstory had no connection to this trickster god, only to the demon/fallen angel cult that they were once devoted to. The trickster god asked if my character thought he deserved to live. Now, a couple of things go through my head. 1, my character still hasn't overcome his guilt. It's been like 6 sessions tops, and there hasn't been any story around my character yet. And 2, this was a trickster god. Who knows what he'd do if I say yes, what he'd do if I say no, or if what I said would even matter. My character, reminder, a farm boy who hasn't seen much magic, let alone a god, answers with a nervous, non-committal, I don't know? Apparently, that's not good enough, and the trickster god sends us back, and while I'm brought back to life, I only have a few hours to live. Crap. Well, maybe we can still salvage it? We rush to the nearest people we think can help, some witches, but they say they can't do anything, and my character dies. Again, with no chance to do anything. Then, the trickster god comes back and tells me that, in no uncertain terms, my whole backstory is a lie, and that it was just planted in my brain by him. There was no cult, there was no assassinating, and no satisfactory resolution, just, ooh, it was all a dream. Naturally, I wasn't super happy about this. Shortly after the session, the DM left the chat, and because I can be a bit shy and DM Novel could be pretty staunch, I asked the other players, who knew her better than I did, how best to approach the situation. They didn't really have any advice, so I just decided to sleep on it and talk to Novel in the morning. Overnight, news of my dissatisfaction made its way back to Novel, and I woke up to a message from her accusing me of gaslighting her friends, banning me from the chat, and blocking me before I could even respond. That did not feel great, as not only had I lost the only game I was playing in, all the players were also playing in my game, which I had put a lot of effort into making for them, and they were like 90% of my friends at the time. They were unwilling to let me back in the group, but I still wanted to know I did wrong so I could at least be better in the future. Tiffy was the only one from the group who hadn't blocked me, so I apologized, asked what exactly I had done as Novel was pretty vague, and Tiffy was just as vague, and then blocked me shortly after. Obviously, jumping into the dreaded what is true dimension here, there could be something else that the player did that warranted this banning, maybe some out-of-game thing. But frankly, since we don't know, we're going to ignore the possibility since, again, we don't know. Let's focus on what we do know. What we do know is that the DM tried to force a romance, which, as we saw in a previous story, not good at all. If somebody doesn't want a romance, you respect that boundary. That is the end of the story. But on top of that, killing off another player character just because you're mad that day is also not a great idea. If you are not in a great emotional state, that's okay. Like, that's not a crime. People have bad days, but it's important to analyze, like, hey, is this going to affect the way I run the game? Because the DM's mood does matter. It matters because your mood affects everything in the world. It seeps into everything that you do. And if that happens to me, I usually just tell my group like, hey, we're gonna rain check this one, or hey, can we play some Minecraft instead? Of course, ideally, this doesn't happen often. I want to play D&D, same as anyone else, but bitterness and D&D don't go hand in hand, and it's best to keep those things separate. Alright, that's going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out Tavern Adjacent, our weekly D&D podcast where we talk a bunch of different tabletop topics while also listening to your horror stories. It's linked in the cards, and while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment visible asexual validation to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.